Ria, today I want to talk about something that still hurts me when I remember it, even though it happened years ago, because that moment changed the way I saw myself, my confidence, and my voice. And it all started on a normal day when I opened my mouth to speak English and everyone laughed.
I'm listening, Oriv, and before you go ahead, let me tell you one thing clearly and slowly. This is not just your story. This is the story of millions of people who stay silent not because they have nothing to say, but because they are afraid of how they will say it.
That's exactly how I felt, because I remember standing in my college classroom, my heart beating fast, my palms sweating, my mind repeating one sentence again and again in English, and I kept telling myself, just say it. It's only one sentence. But the fear of making a mistake was louder than my courage.
And let me guess, the moment you finally spoke, instead of listening to your idea, people reacted to your accent, your grammar, or your hesitation, right?
Yes, and that's the part that broke me, because I said the sentence slowly, with pauses, with effort, and before I could even finish, some students started smiling, some whispered to each other, and a few laughed openly, not loudly, but enough to make me feel small, invisible, and stupid.
That kind of laughter stays in the mind for a long time, because it doesn't just attack your English, it attacks your self-respect.
Exactly, Ria, because after that moment, I stopped raising my hand. I stopped volunteering. I stopped trying to speak. And every time a teacher asked a question in English, my answer stayed trapped inside me, even when I knew it was correct.
What you're describing is not lack of intelligence, it's fear created by humiliation, and that fear slowly convinces you that silence is safer than growth.
Yes, silence felt safe, but it also felt heavy, because inside me there was anger, sadness, and confusion, and I kept asking myself one question again and again. Why did they laugh? Why didn't they understand that I am learning? Why is speaking English treated like a talent instead of a skill?
That question is powerful, because English is not a measure of intelligence, it's a tool, and no one laughs at a baby for falling while learning to walk, but somehow people think it's okay to laugh at someone learning to speak.
After that day, Ria, I avoided English completely. I watched movies in my language. I read less. I spoke less. And slowly I started believing that English was not for people like me. And that belief was more dangerous than the laughter itself.
Because once you believe something is not for you, you stop trying, and when you stop trying, nothing changes.
Exactly. And months passed like this, until one evening I was sitting alone, scrolling through my phone, watching videos of people speaking fluent English confidently, and instead of feeling inspired, I felt angry and jealous, because I thought they were lucky and I was not.
That's a very honest feeling, Oriv, because comparison often creates bitterness before it creates motivation.
Yes, but something different happened that night, because one video showed a person talking about their struggle, about being laughed at, about broken sentences, about wrong grammar, and for the first time, I felt seen, not judged.
That moment matters, because seeing someone survive what you're afraid of gives you permission to try again.
I remember the line clearly. Ria, the person said, people laughed when I spoke, but they became silent when I didn't stop. And that sentence stayed with me like a quiet challenge.
So what did you do next? Because this is usually the point where stories either end in fear or begin in courage.
I decided to start small. very small, in a way that no one would see and no one would laugh. So I started talking to myself in English, alone in my room, making mistakes freely, repeating sentences slowly, without fear, without shame.
That's one of the smartest decisions, because confidence grows in private before it appears in public.
I spoke about my day, my thoughts, my dreams, even my fears, and at first my sentences were broken, mixed with my language, full of pauses, but every day they became a little smoother, a little clearer, and a little stronger.
And let me guess, at some point, English stopped feeling like an enemy and started feeling like a friend you were getting to know.
Yes, slowly, because I also started listening more podcasts, simple videos, slow conversations, not to understand every word, but to understand the flow, the rhythm, the confidence.
That's an important lesson for listeners, because fluency is not about perfect grammar, it's about comfort.
Exactly. And then one day, after months of quiet practice, I found myself in a small group discussion, and without thinking too much, I spoke one sentence in English, not perfectly, but clearly.
And what happened this time?
This time, no one laughed. Maybe because I sounded better, or maybe because I sounded confident, or maybe because I didn't apologize before speaking, but that moment felt like winning a small battle.
Confidence changes how people react, because when you respect your own voice, others hesitate to disrespect it.
Yes, and from that day, I promised myself something very important. I promised that I would never again stop speaking because of someone else's laughter.
That promise is powerful, because growth begins when your decision becomes stronger than your fear.
I still made mistakes, Ria, I still do. But now when I make a mistake, I don't feel shame, I feel progress, because every mistake means I tried.
And that mindset shift is the real success, not accent, not vocabulary, but courage.
Looking back, I realized something very clear. The people who laughed were not better than me. They were just more comfortable, and comfort comes from practice, not talent.
That's a truth many people need to hear, because no one is born fluent, they are formed through repetition and patience.
Today, when I speak English, I still remember that classroom, that laughter, that silence. But instead of pain, it reminds me how far I've come.
And that's why this story matters, because someone listening right now is silent, scared, and doubting themselves, just like you once did.
To that person, I want to say this slowly and clearly. If they laughed when you spoke English, let them laugh, because laughter fades, but your growth stays.
And remember, the world doesn't reward silence, it rewards those who show up again and again, even with broken sentences.
English is not a test of your worth. It's just a bridge, and bridges are built one step at a time.
So speak, even if your voice shakes, even if your grammar is wrong, even if your accent feels heavy, because your voice deserves space.
One day, the same people who laughed will listen, not because you became perfect, but because you refused to quit.
And that's the real lesson of today's podcast. Growth is noisy, uncomfortable, and slow, but silence costs more.
Thank you for listening to this story. And if this feels like your life, don't wait for confidence. Speak first. Confidence will follow.